Alright everyone, right now there are a lot of Democrats that are pushing for an end to the filibuster in the Senate in order to pass legislation more easily. This is a bad idea on many levels. I'm going to try to explain why the people that are saying, well, if you don't support this, you hate democracy. Yeah, I do hate direct democracy. This is legitimately what the Senate was actually instituted to prevent. There's a reason the filibuster exists. There's a reason that generally you need a 60-vote majority for actions within the Senate. It's regrettable that they eliminated the filibuster for judicial nominees. That came back to haunt the Democrats in a big way, just as it was predicted by myself and by every other sane person at the time. Now they're trying to essentially fuck themselves in the ass again, especially right before a midterms in which I think the GOP is going to have a pretty sizable majority in the House and the Senate. I do not believe the Democrats will prevail well in the midterms. Here's the thing. Essentially what they're asking is for Kamala Harris as the head of the Senate. In the de facto sense, the vice president is the tiebreaker and then heads various things in the Senate. They're essentially asking her to grant herself near dictatorial powers over part of the bicameral legislature. Let me explain the historical backdrop of the Senate as opposed to the House of Representatives. Initially, senators weren't even directly voted for. They were voted for by state legislatures. The idea of the Senate is specifically a safeguard against direct democracy. When people use the term democracy, what they really mean is a representative republic. Direct democracy has been tried. It's been tried before in history. It has always failed. It doesn't work, including if you had like a bicameral system. If you have those direct elections for the Senate and for the House, you'd still have a pretty smooth direct democracy without any form of safeguards. The whole idea was that in order for the states to remain stable, semi-autonomous entities and work well together, they would have to be able to check the power of a simple majority of people within the country. Some states are urban, some are rural, and override that in order to prevent the abuse of rural areas, in order to prevent the abuse of smaller states. This is why the Senate exists. The Senate essentially, you get 2 senators per state. It's not democratic, and it's not meant to be. The idea was that the House of Representatives represented people in the most direct sense. That was where democracy occurred, in essence, democracy. The Senate was where you have the republic as a safeguard on the direct democracy, specifically because you can have tyranny of the majority. You can have 51% of the population could vote to abuse the other 49%. In a direct democracy, there is no safeguard against that. Simple majority rules, that's it. It's 2 wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner. That's the famous concept behind a direct democracy. Doesn't work, is not a virtue. Democracy in the direct sense is actually a bad thing. Democracy in the representative sense, if it is properly formulated, is generally a lot more stable. Hence, a Senate, which is not democratically elected, 2 senators per state regardless of population, which means that some states come out better than others, technically speaking, if you're looking at representation in that sense as non-federal constituency, as a state constituency, and was meant to not be a simple majority proceeding, generally speaking. The idea was the House of Representatives is the college kids getting together, smoking weed, and putting forth legislation. The Senate is like a House of Lords sort of thing where cooler heads prevail and things slow down. The final stopgap is the Supreme Court, which has even more decorum. Unfortunately, the Supreme Court has far too much latitude to never take up important cases. They've done this a number of times before. And of course, if the president is part of the same party as those who control the House and the Senate under simple majority, well, without a veto in the way, basically anything can get rammed through. It would also allow you potentially to expand SCOTUS to undermine their authority, creating a de facto one-party state. The problem is that if the Democrats do this, it would be yet another reduction of the decorum of our government, toward a devolution towards direct democracy. It's being pushed by people who are historically illiterate. It's being pushed by people who don't understand, they've never studied ancient Athens, in other words. Direct democracy cannot work. The closer you approximate it, the worse our government will be. You think, well, the will of the people is with X, Y, and Z. Well, yes, but there are exceptions to that rule. Sometimes you can perceive something as being popular and it's not. Sometimes a popular thing is a terrible idea. For instance, after 9/11, it was a popular idea to invade other countries. Wildly popular. Was it a good idea to invade them? Well, at the time, there were a handful of people, largely on the left, who opposed that, including myself. Cooler heads did not prevail. Because the mob, the democratic mob, essentially demanded that we start several shitty wars. But imagine that instead of, fucking probably high 60s or something approval for the idea of bombing random people around the world, imagine if it had been just a slim majority. The chorus appeals, 52% of the population agrees that we should attack Saddam Hussein. Maybe cooler heads would have prevailed. But unfortunately, the mob was listened to. There was no attempt to use the normal decorum of the legislature to constrain the actions of government in the sense of war. This has happened many times. Knee-jerk reactions by the public, and then the demands that they give to people in the legislature is the root of much evil in the country. It's worse than an imperial presidency. At least, generally speaking, there's some sort of stopgap on their power. The legislature potentially, if you were to remove the filibuster, which is specifically incepted to be anti-democratic, not without good reason, the removal of the filibuster basically turns the Senate into another version of the House of Representatives. Well, you've already got a House of Representatives to represent the democratic wishes of the people. Their job is to take those wishes, pass them, or say yay or nay. They pass them, then it goes to the Senate. The Senate's not supposed to directly consider that. It's supposed to consider the states. What effect does it have on the state? Not just the people within it, but the state as a governing entity. The state as a semi-autonomous nation state. That's what states were. They're nation states. We're a federation of different, basically, sub-countries. That's what the United States essentially is. It's a new world mentality. It's not like the way the old world worked. Think of the United States as being, basically EU 1.0 with plenty of added benefits in the constitutional sense. Again, the Senate initially wasn't even directly elected. It was never the intent of our country to be a direct democracy, and nor should it be in any way, shape, or form. That's about all. Peace out.